Hello, Hunter. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm joining today from Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States of America.
Oh, great. I love Boston. Yeah, I'm in New York, so I'm not too far away. Yeah.
Nice. It's finally
Yeah.
starting to warm up a little.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was sweating when we started. I was like, do I have to turn on the AC? Really? Did we go from 0 to 100 instantly?
Yep.
So I read a little bit about your bio there. I'd love to hear more about your journey and how you got where you are today.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this opportunity to speak. So, my name's Sarah. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I've been focused on team and leadership development and inclusion for over 25 years. I started when I was five, just kidding. I just happen to look a little young. And I've been running my own company, Sarah A Scala Consulting, for almost 13 years. I support national, local, global organizations and companies, and I really love doing this work. In addition, I am a leadership and executive and team coach. I do public speaking globally and do a lot of work around inclusion and belonging.
I love that. Thank you. So you've been in this, like you said, since you were five,
Yep.
and me too, with my career. And you've worked with a wide range of leaders and teams. So what does continuous learning actually look like in organizations that truly prioritize growth and inclusion?
Yeah. So when organizations have a priority for long term learning and inclusion, and that's their priority, that means first and foremost, making learning accessible to everyone. So embedding it into their daily work, aligning it with business and inclusion goals. Really, it's about making learning opportunities accessible, open dialogue, using learning to break down silos so diverse perspectives are valued and they're integrated into the decision making at all different levels and parts of the organization. So, in those organizations, most of the time, learning isn't a box to check, it's embedded in the culture. So, leaders are modeling lifelong learning and also curiosity. Feedback usually goes both ways or cross functionally, all directions, and inclusion is measured not just by who's at the table, but by who really feels heard. So, growth and
Mm,
inclusion really go hand in hand when learning is seen as a shared responsibility.
mm, yeah, I love that. So, what are some common traits or habits you've seen in high performing, growth minded professionals?
Yeah, so high performers or high pose, as they're sometimes known as,
I suppose. I haven't
high
heard that
pose,
before.
high pose. Yep, they're proactive, they're adaptable, they often have a good sense of empathy and a very strong growth mindset, realizing that at any stage of our career, we have to always keep learning. Things are shifting. Innovation is happening, technology is evolving, AI is
Mm,
here. We need to be sure that we're up to speed on that. High potentials often seek feedback, they embrace challenges, and they change. And they welcome change, continuously learning, taking ownership of their work. Emotional intelligence as well as resilience are also key for high potentials. And they realize they're not going to be perfect and they're going to stumble sometimes or make some
mm,
mistakes, but they're okay with the occasional fumble or stumble as long as they're able to grow. And so they manage relationships well also. So if I'm a high potential leader in an organization, it's not just because I'm wicked smart, as they would say in Boston. It's because I have built relationships and networks to
yeah.
help. And they also ask better questions. They ask more questions than they give answers to. So I know earlier in folks' careers, they want to be the one that's speaking up and giving all the answers. Those that are moving up and is seen as high potentials,
Mm,
they don't mind asking the better questions instead of being the one with all of the answers. So high potentials, they self-reflect a lot, they seek feedback, they view challenges as a chance to experiment, not to prove themselves. And they don't confuse being busy with being effective. That's another big
Mm,
one with high potentials.
wow, that's really huge. That's really, really huge. So I feel like there's a lot of us that have high potential to be high potentials.
Yeah,
You know,
hypo to
like
be hypo.
right, right, right. Like that it's all in there, but maybe it's not in alignment with the self-reflection or taking feedback or not beating ourselves up when we make a mistake. Like, how do we click over? And I'm sure it's incremental. How do we click over from the potential of being a high potential to the high potential to the next step?
To the next step. Yeah. So I think building our networks and our support systems are incredibly important as we're looking to evolve and grow in our careers, looking at what resources do we have or do I have that support me. As a solopreneur, I have 8 mentors, eight, eight, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And I have a coach and I have a therapist because I have to deal with people and their stuff. That's a part of my job as a coach. So, trying to make sure that you have a dream team or a pseudo board of directors that can help you as you're making that transition from high potential to be high potential to being a high potential. I'm kidding, but being in that lane to advance your career, having folks that can support you in your growth is pretty important. It's not a solo journey. The evolution to leadership or executive roles, or even to a management role from an individual contributor, you can't do it all on your own.
Yeah. 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 It's impossible. It really is impossible. I am like you, I have more than five mentors. And then it's like you have to be respectful of your 8 mentors' time and all of that
Yeah,
stuff. Like it's a lot of responsibility to level up and take care of ourselves because we can't do it alone.
no, not at all.
Yeah. So for job seekers, especially those in mid-career or pivoting, what mindset or approach do you recommend when it comes to this ongoing development?
Yeah, so 2 things for folks who are in transition or looking for new opportunities is to think about who is in your network. I think, just a few years ago, the studies were showing that 90% of new jobs, 90, were going to people through their networks versus online applicant tracking systems. 90%. So
Wow.
thinking about who is in your network, who knows someone that knows someone, 3 degrees of separation that could help with your search. Also, informational interviews can be really pivotal for folks. It's only asking somebody for 10 or 15 minutes of their time to ask them questions about their role, their industry, or their company. Sometimes they may say, "Oh, my buddy Bob is actually hiring for that
Mhm.
role," and maybe it leads to that. But more
Yeah.
times than not, it's about building awareness about the organization or the industry, the culture, and it gives you some good tips as you continue as a job searcher. I think having or adopting a growth mindset, see challenges as opportunities, keep curious, and commit to lifelong learning. Don't be afraid to step
Mm,
out of your comfort zone, seek some feedback. Again, build that network of peers and mentors to support that journey. I think
mm,
staying humble and staying curious are also key. And it's important to
mhm.
remind ourselves that, especially with all the job losses and transitionings happening today, that
Yes.
you're never starting over from scratch. You're building
Right.
on your past experience. So focus on what you want to learn next, not what you think you should already know.
Huh.
I think is pretty important. Reinvention is a leadership skill, not a setback. So even if you're transitioning industries or fields or careers, you're never starting from brand new.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love that so much. It gives us this grace period of being kind to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
it's easy to be like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. I'm so behind everything. It's like I'm exactly where I need to be, whether I like it or not.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for maybe HR and talent leaders that are under pressure to retain talent and
Yep.
build future ready workforces, you were just speaking to that there's job losses and how do you retain people that you want to retain? What role does learning development play in reducing turnover and this increasing engagement?
Yeah, I think that L&D is critical for retention and engagement. When employees see a clear path for growth and feel that their development is valued, they're more likely to stay and invest in the company's success. If I feel like, wow, there's a place for me here, I can be growing in this company. It's not just like everyone at my level just stops there. So it's really important to, if you're a leader or you're HR, to help employees see possible career paths at your company.
Yep.
Learning and development also fosters a culture of continuous improvement and loyalty. And so whether it's, having learning and development programs or cohorts for folks in different parts of the organization, or developing mentor programs, which I'm a huge fan of. And that's one of the best ways to share knowledge and culture, as well as supporting retention. So, learning and development is pivotal. When people feel like they're growing, they stay. Learning fuels people's purpose, and purpose fuels retention, right? If I'm at a job and I'm doing well and there's opportunities for me to build my skills, my competencies, my behaviors, I'm much more likely to stick around. So, learning and development isn't just about upskilling, it's about showing employees that the organization is invested in them, not just in their output.
Yeah. Yeah. So you also specialize in LGBTQ plus leadership coaching and inclusive team development. How can continued learning support belonging and representation in leadership?
Yep. So whether you're a member of a less represented community or an ally, getting involved in LGBT or DEI types of organizations, nonprofits or professional, organizations, is critical. For example, I'm a member of the National Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce and the Massachusetts
Hmm.
Lesbian and Gay Chamber of Commerce. And so I attend these events and meetings where I can network with other allies, and I speak and facilitate and do workshops for both organizations. And that really helps me to build awareness of what's happening in the markets, or what's happening with folks who may be less represented, but it also helps me to build the network, build my skills, and get a pulse check on what's happening in inclusion and belonging for folks both at work and at home. So continuous learning supports belonging by building people's cultural competencies, addressing unconscious bias. And folks, I have to tell you, everyone has bias, even me, even you. Every single person on the planet has bias. So having learning and development opportunities where people can become more aware of their biases, how they might be showing up at work or even at home, is pretty important as well.
Yeah, I definitely have my own. It's an ongoing, like you said, learning, and there's also an unlearning, right? Because there's
Learning, yeah,
subconscious stuff that I have the gift of being here at Power to Fly for 4 or 5 years or something like that now, and I get to
right.
talk to all these amazing people, and I'll be in the middle of a conversation, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have this like realization for myself, like I've been just unconsciously thinking about this thing that is totally wrong that I learned maybe as a self-defense mechanism or something. As also as a queer person, there were things that I had to do to take care of myself that I don't need to do anymore, right?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
How do
unlearning those biases, I think,
yeah,
is really key.
how do you continue your continuous learning, right? Because you're teaching that for others, but what do you do for
Yeah.
yourself?
What do I do? So I do a number of things. So I try to read 50 books a year. Sometimes they're about business, sometimes they're about something totally different. Like last year I read Cape Cod by Henry David Thoreau because I was
Yeah.
born on Cape Cod. It was something I could listen to in some car rides. And so reading is really key for me. I also um, am involved in 5 communities of practice for
Mm.
coaches and organization development leaders. So having those communities to be involved in. If there's
Yeah.
something I want to learn and I'm not really sure about, YouTube's a good place to go. I also take classes on edX, Coursera, or LinkedIn Learning. I love to learn. And so every day I'm looking at what can I learn? What do I want to know about? And I think we're so fortunate today, Hunter, that we have access to a lot of these resources at little to no cost. So I'm a patron of my local public library. I can watch YouTube videos at no cost. I can do Coursera or edX classes at no cost unless I want the formal certificate that says you have taken this class. So
Right.
there's a lot of really good opportunities. Also, I learn a ton from my 8 mentors, having those partnerships and relationships as well.
Yeah. I was just doing the math. That's 4 books a month for you, a little over
Uh-huh.
4 books a month. Is that
Audio books can count though. So
yeah,
after
of course.
this, I'm going on a bike ride and I'll be listening to a book.
Beautiful day for a bike ride.
Perfect.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, audiobooks definitely count because I'm a both learner, right? Like I need to read, I need to see, but I'm because probably the ADHD in me, I need variety. Variety is the spice of life for me.
Yeah. Me
Yeah.
too.
So
Me too.
what piece of career or leadership advice is something that you received early on in your career that still comes back up for you today?
So a couple things. My dad, who is now 70, he's a carpenter who we've taught how to use YouTube. So now when he needs to learn stuff, he does that as well.
That's
But as a
awesome.
carpenter and a custom builder, ever since I was very small, he would always say, plan your work and work your plan. So being strategic and scheduled, I have found has been really helpful. Also, early on, I was told, listen more than you speak. Everyone has something to teach you. And so I'm highly extroverted. I love speaking publicly, and I'm always engaged in events and, things where I'm out and about. And as an executive and team coach, I have to listen more than I speak. The third thing is that leaders don't need to have all the answers. I think 15 or 20 years ago, people were put in a leadership role because they had every answer. Today, they don't. So it's okay to create space for those better questions and to not be afraid to ask your team. I'm coaching a executive right now who says I have my meetings and they're scheduled and I run them and I have the full agenda and I'm all ready and prepared to share. And I said, that's awesome. What about all the other people who are in the room? What do you mean? What do I mean? I mean that you may be, because you're so confident and prepared, limiting how much others are sharing. So for the past month, he's been working on speaking second or third because we don't
Mm,
always have to have all the answers or be the first to speak. And many times, as leaders, our presence, if we speak first, may make others feel like, oh, my idea wasn't as good, or I'm now going to look stupid in front of the boss. So I'm working with him right now to help him be an even more effective executive as it comes to running meetings and
I
engaging
love
with
that.
his reports. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's you're giving space for other people. Maybe people don't have the instinct or the comfortable safety yet to be the first to speak up. But if you
Yeah.
make it normalized that everyone can kind of speak up, maybe on a rotated situation or whatever you coach him on, that
Yeah.
makes it a psychological safety, right? For people to be able to just
Absolutely.
express ideas. And maybe the leader in that role then can be like, oh, that's actually maybe a better idea than what I was going to say. And now that'll affect how I talk about whatever I talk about.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up psychological safety, which is a topic I coach and speak on very frequently because teams that and leaders that have high levels of psychological safety with their teams are the ones that aren't afraid of debate or looking at different perspectives. It's not that we all have to sing kumbaya and be rowing in the same direction, although I'm a kayaker, so I prefer to row in one direction, which is forward, but giving that safety for people to disagree and to challenge each other in the team or with the leader is really mission critical.
Yeah, you're so sporty. You're so inspiring to me. I need to catch up.
Tomorrow afternoon or Friday, maybe some kayaking. So
So cool. Oh gosh, I love that.
thank
Um, yeah, so great. What are for both individuals and companies, what are some first steps to create personal or organizational learning strategy that actually sticks, right? Because it's like going to
you.
the
Yeah.
gym. I have all these aspirations and then I don't go anymore, or I'm gonna go bike or kayak, but I can't get my act together. How do you get it to stick?
Yeah. So the first question I always ask when I'm working with a client is what are we solving for? What are we solving for? What's the goal or the objective? And then who are the stakeholders or executive leaders who are going to support this? Does this need to be a grassroots effort because we have little support at the top? Or is the CEO willing to be the spokesperson for this new initiative, change, learning and development program? Also, very important to do a needs assessment to really get the pulse check and the understanding of what's really going on. I remember earlier in my career, I was working in learning and development in the financial industry, and the organization was having significant turnover, like 20% turnover in the first 90 days of frontline staff. And I kept thinking, they're doing awesome in training class. I set them free and let them go to their locations, but they're not sticking around. What is going on? So I did a
Mm.
needs assessment, and I discovered it was a sink or swim culture when folks were now, working on location. And so to deal with that, I designed a mentor program to support these new hires. The frontline staff who was selected at each location to be the mentors got an incentive as long as the mentee was doing well and sticking around. So not only,
Mm.
oh, and this improved retention by 88% in the first year. So it was huge. We went from 20% turnover to like one person left the company because their spouse like left the state and they had to move. So doing the needs assessment first, I think is pretty critical, and having ways to measure to show how much is this costing us as an issue, or how much will this solution save us if it works. The ROI of it is also very important. So, doing that needs assessment, having sponsorship of it, and not being afraid to put the work in to make it stick, as you said.
Mm, I love that. And do you have any favorite tools or frameworks that people could start today if they were to do one thing today?
Yeah, I have a couple. Mentorship programs, as I've spoken about many times. I'm a huge fan of those. Micro learning, if you have platforms or can design platforms for micro learning, awesome. Feedback loops to keep the learning relevant, accountability partners. These are all different models and methods that can help the learning really stick.
I love that. And what's the best way to keep the conversation going with you if people want to reach out?
Yep. So I am on LinkedIn, Sarah Scala, Sarahscala. And I also have a great website, sarahscala.com.
Awesome. It's always satisfying when you get your name, right? You actually got the domain, you nailed it.
I own the company. Exactly.
Well, Sarah, this was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for making the time today. I hope we get to do this again. You can definitely expect my LinkedIn request.
Awesome. Hunter, thanks again to
Yeah.
you and your whole team for this wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great rest of your day, Sarah.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye now.